Lucy didn't realize she was being drained until the moment Enzo declared her too weak to be his Luna. 3 years. 3 years of exhaustion she blamed on herself. 3 years of headaches, nightmares, and a wolf that barely whispered anymore. 3 years of him growing stronger while she withered. They were supposed to be celebrating their future together on the night of the grand solstice. Instead, it became her public execution. Your feeble Omega spirit would hinder my rise to power, Enzo announced, his arm already wrapped around Sophia, the high-born alpha female who'd replaced her before Lucy even knew she was replaceable. The crowd expected her to crawl away, to accept her place at the bottom of the hierarchy where weak Omegas belonged. Lucy did something else entirely. She walked straight to the obsidian throne, where Luca Northwind, an alpha king rumored to have no heart and a wolf made of shadows, sat watching the spectacle. And she didn't kneel. She kissed him, in front of everyone, in defiance of every ancient law, in a move that should have gotten her killed. But the king didn't kill her. He smiled, and when she whispered, "Give me the crown," he said, "I was too weak to carry." He said yes. What Lucy doesn't know yet, Enzo wasn't just cruel. He was stealing from her and wanted to get rid of the proof. And the king she just bound herself to, he's dying from the inside out, and she might be the only one who can save him, or doom them both. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to your new addiction. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button, because you're going to want to see how this story ends. Trust me. Now, back to Lucy's nightmare. The champagne glass shattered against marble before Lucy even registered she'd dropped it. Around her, the grand solstice gala froze. A tableau of silk gowns, diamond-encrusted collars, and predatory eyes, all locked on the center of the silver crescent ballroom. On her, the chandeliers above blazed with 1,000 candles, their light catching on the tears she refused to let fall. "Did you hear what I said, Lucy?" Enzo's voice carried across the silence, smooth as poisoned honey. Her mate, no, her former mate, stood 10 feet away with his hand possessively wrapped around Sophia's waist. Sophia, whose bloodline traced back to the first alphas. Sophia, whose wolf could probably crush Lucy's without breaking a sweat. Lucy's wolf whimpered inside her chest, a sound like breaking glass. "I said," Enzo continued, his amber eyes cold despite the smile on his lips, "that I, Enzo Castellan, future alpha of the Silver Crescent Pack, hereby reject you, Lucy Thorne, as my mate and Luna." The words landed like physical blows. Lucy felt the bond between them. 3 years of whispered promises, stolen kisses, nights where he swore she was his forever, begin to crack. Not break, crack, like ice spider webbing across a frozen lake. "Your Omega spirit is too feeble," Enzo said, and the assembled wolves murmured their agreement. "I need a mate who can stand beside me when I take my father's throne. Someone strong, someone worthy." Sophia pressed closer to him, her red lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore the silver and sapphire necklace that Lucy had admired in the market last month, the one Enzo said was too expensive when she pointed it out. How long had this been planned? Lucy's hands trembled at her sides. Around her, the wolves of high society watched with barely concealed glee. This was entertainment for them. The weak Omega getting discarded for a proper alpha female. This was the natural order asserting itself. "Nothing to say?" Enzo tilted his head, false sympathy dripping from every word. "I expected tears at least. Or perhaps you're finally accepting what you've always been, a burden I carried out of pity." Something inside Lucy shifted. It wasn't rage exactly. It was colder than that. Clearer. She'd spent 3 years making herself smaller for him, quieter, apologizing for her Omega nature as if it were a disease. She'd believed him when he said her gentleness was weakness, her empathy a flaw. She'd actually thanked him for choosing her despite her inadequacies. What the hell had she been thinking? Lucy lifted her chin and met Enzo's eyes. She didn't speak. Instead, she turned away from him, away from Sophia's triumphant smirk, away from the pitying stares of the pack elders, and walked, not toward the exit, toward the obsidian throne. The crowd's murmurs died completely. At the far end of the ballroom, elevated on a dais of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, sat Luca Northwind, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the Warden of Shadows, the wolf that other wolves whispered about in hushed, fearful tones. Lucy had never seen him before tonight. Few had. He rarely left his fortress in the Frostback Mountains, and when he did attend gatherings like this, he watched from his throne like a god observing ants. He was watching now. Lucy's heart hammered against her ribs as she climbed the 3 steps to the dais. Protocol demanded she kneel, bow her head, avert her eyes from a king's direct gaze. She did none of those things. Up close, Luca Northwind was devastating. Not handsome in the conventional sense. His features were too sharp for that, too predatory. His hair was black as a raven's wing, pulled back from a face that could have been carved from the same obsidian as his throne. But his eyes, they were molten gold, ancient and knowing, and they tracked her every movement with an intensity that should have sent her running. Instead, Lucy reached out and fisted her hand in the front of his black shirt. The entire ballroom gasped. "Your Majesty," Lucy said, her voice steady despite the way her whole body shook. "I have a proposition." One of Luca's dark eyebrows lifted. He didn't pull away from her grip. Bold, for an Omega who was just publicly rejected. "Rejected by a coward," Lucy corrected. Behind her, she heard Enzo's sharp intake of breath, a weak, pathetic alpha who needs to stand on someone else's back to feel tall. Luca's lips twitched. It might have been amusement. It might have been the prelude to her death. "And you think insulting your former mate in my presence will earn you?" "What exactly?" "Nothing," Lucy said. "I'm not here for charity." She leaned in close enough to feel the heat radiating from him, close enough to catch his scent, pine and smoke and something darker, something that made her wolf sit up and take notice despite everything, close enough that when she spoke only he could hear. "He called me too weak to be a Luna, too feeble to wear a crown." Lucy's fingers tightened in his shirt. "So I'm asking you, Alpha King, let me prove him wrong. Give me the crown he said I could never carry. Make me your queen." For 3 heartbeats, Luca didn't move. Then his hand came up to cup the back of her neck, his grip firm and possessive and sending electricity racing down her spine. His eyes had gone completely gold now. His wolf was at the surface. "You have no idea what you're asking for, little Omega," he murmured. "Then show me." Lucy didn't know where the words came from. Didn't know where she found the courage to close the final inches between them and press her lips to his. The kiss was nothing like Enzo's careful, controlled affection. This was wildfire and midnight and the edge of a cliff. Luca's mouth claimed hers with a fierce possession that stole her breath and set her blood singing. His other hand came to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and Lucy felt the rumble of his wolf's approval vibrate through his chest. When she finally pulled back, the ballroom was in chaos. Wolves were shouting. Someone, probably Enzo, was demanding the king execute her for her insolence. The pack elders looked apoplectic. Sophia had gone pale as snow. Lucy didn't care about any of them. She turned in Luca's arms, his hand still at her waist, acclaiming if she'd ever felt one, and found Enzo's face in the crowd. His amber eyes were wide with shock and something that looked like fear. "You want to know the difference between you and him?" Lucy said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He doesn't need to tear me down to feel powerful." Luca's low chuckle sent shivers through her. His lips brushed her ear as he spoke, his voice carrying the absolute authority of a king. "The Omega has made her request, I accept." The room erupted. but Lucy barely heard it over the pounding of her own heart and the shocking, impossible truth settling in her bones. She'd just bound herself to the most dangerous wolf in the empire, and she had absolutely no idea if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her own death warrant. Lucy woke to the smell of pine and frost, her body aching in places she didn't know could ache. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, draped in furs that probably cost more than her entire childhood home. Through massive windows, she could see snow falling over jagged mountain peaks, the Frostback Range, Luca's territory, miles from anywhere civilized, miles from anywhere civilized, miles from any escape. "You're awake." Lucy jerked upright, clutching the silk sheet to her chest. Luca stood by the window, dressed in simple black training leathers that did nothing to hide the lethal grace of his movements. In daylight, he looked even more dangerous, all sharp angles and coiled strength. "Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse. "My fortress, the Shadow Keep." He didn't turn to look at her. "You asked to be queen. Queens don't sleep in the servants' quarters." The memory of last night crashed over her. The kiss, the claiming, Enzo's face twisted in rage and disbelief. What had she done? "I need to explain," Lucy started. "You used me." Luca finally turned, his gold eyes unreadable. "You wanted revenge on your pathetic ex-mate, so you threw yourself at the most powerful wolf you could find. Did you think I wouldn't see through it?" Lucy's heart hammered. "Then why did you accept?" "Because, little Omega, you're useful." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping at the foot of the bed. "Tell me, do you know what a warden actually does?" She shook her head. "We keep the old things locked away. The shadow wolves, the primal spirits that existed before civilization, tried to tame us. They're always hungry, always pushing at the barriers, and holding them back." His jaw tightened. "It costs. I don't understand." "You will." Luca's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Your ex-mate was right about one thing. Omegas are weak. But not in the way he thinks. You're not built for dominance or violence. You're built for balance, for dampening rage, for making monsters remember they were once men." Lucy's breath caught. "You want me to? I want you to keep me sane," Luca interrupted. "The wolf rot is eating me alive, Lucy. Every day I feel myself slipping further into the shadows. I've killed 3 potential queens because they couldn't handle what lives inside me. But you?" His eyes gleamed. "You walked up to a king and demanded a crown. Either you're suicidally brave or you have something real beneath all that fear. And if I can't do what you need, then you'll die screaming like the others." He said it so casually, like discussing the weather. "But I don't think you will. You survived 3 years with a parasite draining your light. You're stronger than you know." Before Lucy could respond, the door burst open. A massive wolf, no, a man who moved like a wolf, filled the doorway. "Your Majesty, we have a problem," he growled. "Enzo Castellan is at the gates with half the Silver Crescent pack. He's demanding you return his stolen property." Luca's smile turned predatory. Perfect timing. He looked at Lucy, and something flickered in those ancient eyes. "Challenge. Testing. Ready for your first lesson, my queen?" Lucy's legs trembled as she descended the fortress stairs, dressed in clothes that weren't hers, a fitted black dress that hugged her curves and made her feel dangerous. Luca walked beside her, his presence a dark storm barely contained. "Remember," he murmured as they approached the main gates, "you're not his anymore. You're mine." "Act like it." The courtyard was chaos. Enzo stood at the front of 50 Silver Crescent wolves, his face mottled with rage. Sophia clung to his arm, but even she looked uncertain facing the Shadow Keep's obsidian walls. "Northwind," Enzo's voice cracked like a whip. "You violated sacred pack law. Lucy Thorne is me, mate. Return her immediately, or what?" Luca's voice was silk over steel. "You'll declare war on the crown? Please, Castellan, entertain me." Lucy forced herself to step forward, every instinct screaming to hide behind Luca. But queens didn't hide. "I'm not your mate anymore, Enzo. You rejected me, remember?" in front of everyone. I made a mistake. Enzo's eyes were wild, desperate. Lucy, please, come home. We can fix this. Something twisted in Lucy's chest. This was the man she'd loved for 3 years. The man who'd held her through nightmares, who promised her forever. And now he stood before her begging, and all she felt was empty. No, she said quietly. We can't. You don't understand what you've done. Enzo pushed past his warriors, closing the distance. That thing standing beside you isn't a wolf anymore. He's a monster. The shadow wolves are consuming him from the inside. Everyone knows it. He'll kill you, Lucy, just like he killed the others. Luca laughed, the sound devoid of humor. At least I killed him quickly. What you did to her was far worse. What's he talking about? Lucy turned to Enzo. What did you do? Enzo's face went white. Nothing. He's lying. But Luca was already moving, pulling a small black stone from his pocket. It pulsed with a sickly red light. Found this in your former chambers, little Omega? Recognize it? Lucy's blood ran cold. She'd seen that stone before, hidden in Enzo's desk drawer. He'd said it was a family heirloom. It's a leech stone, Luca continued, his voice dropping to something lethal. Forbidden for 3 centuries. It slowly drains an Omega's spiritual energy and transfers it to whoever placed the binding. Tell me, Castellan, how long were you feeding off her light? The courtyard erupted in shocked murmurs. That's insane, Enzo snarled. You expect anyone to believe? 3 years, Lucy whispered, pieces clicking into place. The exhaustion that never went away. The way she grew weaker, while Enzo seemed to grow stronger. The headaches, the nightmares, the feeling of being hollowed out from the inside. You've been stealing from me for 3 years. Enzo's silence was answer enough. Rage, pure, burning, righteous rage, exploded through Lucy's chest. Her wolf, dormant for so long, suddenly roared to life. The air around her began to shimmer with power. Lucy, wait, Enzo started. She didn't wait. Energy erupted from her in a wave that sent Enzo flying backward 20 feet. Every wolf in the courtyard dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the sheer force of her fury. When the dust settled, Lucy stood alone in a circle of scorched earth, her whole body glowing with stolen power finally returned. Luca's smile was terrifying. Now that's a queen. The training room smelled like sweat and blood. Lucy dodged left as a practice dummy swung at her head, then channeled her energy into her fist. The dummy exploded into splinters. The 5th one this hour. Better, Lucas said from the shadows. He always watched from the shadows. But you're still holding back. Why? Because I'm terrified I'll hurt someone, Lucy gasped, wiping sweat from her forehead. 3 days since Enzo's humiliation at the gates. 3 days of discovering she had enough power to level mountains, power he'd stolen and hoarded like a dragon with gold. Good. Fear makes you careful. Luca emerged into the light, circling her like a predator. But it also makes you weak. The High Council meets in 4 days. They'll challenge your right to stand beside me. You need to be ready. Lucy's stomach twisted. The Council, 12 ancient alphas who'd rather die than see an Omega wear a crown. What if I'm not? Then they'll kill you. He said it so casually, and probably me too eventually. The wolf rot grows stronger every day. He was right. Lucy had noticed the changes. Sometimes his eyes stayed gold too long. Sometimes she caught him talking to things that weren't there. The shadow wolves were winning. Tell me about them, she said softly. The others, the queens who died. Luca's jaw tightened. Why? Because I need to know what I'm up against. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, the first lasted 3 days. She tried to dominate the shadows with force. They ate her alive. The second lasted 2 weeks. She was gentle, kind, everything an Omega should be, but kindness without strength is just permission to be devoured. The third, his voice dropped. She was perfect, almost balanced me completely. Then my mother poisoned her. Lucy's head snapped up. Your mother? June Northwind, former Queen of the North. Luca's smile was bitter. She believes the werewolf monarchy is a disease, that alphas and omegas create nothing but violence and subjugation. She wants to burn it all down and rebuild something civilized, something human. The name struck Lucy like lightning. June. Her mother's name was June, but that was impossible. Her mother had died when she was 5. A rogue attack, they'd said. Before she could process this, the door burst open. A messenger stumbled in, bleeding from a gash across his chest. Your Majesty, he wheezed. Enzo's pack. They've allied with 3 others. They're calling it the Liberation Front. They say you've enslaved an Omega against her will. They're demanding a trial by blood. Luca cursed viciously. When? Tomorrow night. Full moon. The messenger swayed. And sire, Enzo says if you refuse, he'll march on every Omega settlement in the Empire. He'll free them all. Lucy's blood ran cold. There were thousands of Omegas in those settlements. Families, children. He's bluffing, she whispered. No, Luca said darkly. He's desperate. And desperate wolves do unforgivable things. He turned to her, something like regret flickering in his eyes. I can fight him alone. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Lucy straightened her spine. He declared war on me the moment he put that stone in my room. This ends tomorrow. The trial arena was carved into the mountain itself, a circular pit surrounded by thousands of wolves baying for blood. Lucy stood in the center, her heart hammering against her ribs. Across from her, Enzo shifted his weight, already half transformed. His wolf rippled beneath his skin, eager to tear her apart. Last chance, Lucy, he called out. Admit you were coerced. Come back to me. I'll forgive everything. Forgive? Lucy's laugh was sharp as glass. You stole 3 years of my life. You made me believe I was worthless, and now you want forgiveness. I made you wrong. Enzo roared. Without me taking your excess power, you would have burned yourself out. I saved you. The crowd murmured. Some nodded agreement. Omegas with too much power were dangerous, unstable. Everyone knew that. Luca's voice cut through the noise from his position at the arena's edge. The trial begins at moonrise. First blood or surrender. Those are the only ways this ends. Lucy met his golden eyes. For a moment she saw something there. Concern? Fear? But then his expression shuddered, and he was the untouchable king again. The moon crested the mountain peak. Enzo lunged. Lucy barely dodged, his claws shredding the air where her throat had been. She rolled, came up throwing energy blasts that he absorbed like they were nothing. Of course, he'd spent years feeding on her power. He knew every frequency, every wavelength. You can't win. Enzo tackled her into the dirt, his weight crushing. I know you better than you know yourself. His claws descended toward her face and stopped. Lucy's hand was wrapped around his wrist, glowing with silver light. Not the gold of stolen power. Something else. Something that made Enzo's eyes widen in shock. You're right, Lucy whispered. You do know the old me, the weak, desperate girl who needed you to feel complete. She pushed, and Enzo flew backward like he weighed nothing. But she's dead. You killed her when you put that stone in my room. Lucy stood, and the air itself seemed to bow around her. The silver light intensified, spreading across her skin like liquid moonlight. In the crowd, she heard wolves gasp. Impossible, someone whispered. That's prima luna light, pure Omega essence. No Omega has manifested that in centuries, another voice said. Enzo scrambled backward, genuine fear on his face. What are you? Everything you tried to steal. Lucy raised her hand and Enzo's body seized. She could feel it now, the connection between them, the parasitic bond he'd forged. And she could feel something else. A third presence in that bond, a woman's presence. Who helped you place the leech stone? Lucy demanded, tightening her grip. You're not smart enough to do it alone. Enzo's face contorted in pain. A woman came to me 3 years ago, said she could help me become the strongest alpha in history, said all I had to do was bind you to me, drain you slowly. She said it was for the greater good. What was her name? June, Enzo gasped. She said her name was June. The world tilted. Lucy's mother, alive, orchestrating everything. Her grip faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. Enzo surged forward with a roar, his claws aimed at her heart. Luca's body slammed into Enzo mid-strike, sending them both tumbling across the arena floor. No interference! The High Council Alpha roared. The king has violated trial law. But Luca wasn't listening. His wolf had fully emerged, shadows pouring from his skin like smoke. He pinned Enzo to the ground, claws at his throat. "You don't touch her!" "Luca, stop!" Lucy screamed. Too late. The shadows writhing around Luca suddenly surged, wrapping around Enzo's body. The Silver Crescent Alpha screams echoed off the mountain walls as the darkness began consuming him. This wasn't justice. This was the wolf rot taking over. "Luca!" Lucy threw herself at him, her silver light colliding with his shadows. The impact threw them both backward. When the dust cleared, Luca was on his knees, his eyes completely black. No gold, no humanity, just hunger. "Get back," he rasped, his voice layered with something ancient and terrible. "Lucy, run." I can't hold them." The shadow wolves. They were here. Around the arena, wolves began panicking, fleeing toward the exits. But the council alphas stood firm, their eyes gleaming with something like satisfaction. "You see?" the head councilman called out. "The king is lost. The Omega failed to balance him. As we predicted, she's made him worse." Lucy's heart shattered. He was right. Her power, her presence, it hadn't saved Luca. It had accelerated his decline. A figure emerged from the council's box, a woman with Lucy's eyes and silver hair. "June, my daughter," her voice carried across the chaos. "You've done exactly what I needed. You've exposed the monarchy's fatal flaw. Alphas and Omegas don't balance each other. They destroy each other. It's time to end this cycle." "You're insane," Lucy whispered. "I'm free." June descended into the arena, unafraid of the writhing shadows. "I was once like you, an Omega who loved an Alpha King. Your father, he promised me we'd change the world together. Instead, his wolf consumed him, and I watched him slaughter innocents." Her eyes hardened. "I won't let that happen again. The monarchy ends tonight." June raised her hand and silver chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around Luca's body. Ancient magic, Omega magic, designed specifically to bind alphas. "No!" Lucy lunged, but council guards grabbed her, holding her back. "It's already done, child." June approached Luca's restrained form. "The wolf rot is irreversible. The kindest thing is a quick death." She drew a blade carved from moonstone. "And with the king gone, the council will dissolve the monarchy. We'll build something better, something human." Lucy struggled against her captors, tears streaming. Everything had fallen apart. Enzo had been bait. The trial had been a trap. And she'd walked right into it. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Luca, whose black eyes found hers. For a moment, she thought she saw him in there, the real him, fighting the darkness. Then June's blade descended. Lucy's scream tore through the arena, not of despair, but of pure, crystalline rage. The silver light exploded from her body in a shock wave that shattered June's chains like glass. The guards holding Lucy flew backward. The blade stopped inches from Luca's chest, suspended in midair by Lucy's will alone. "You don't get to decide his fate," Lucy snarled, rising to her feet. The prima luna light blazed around her like a star. "You don't get to decide anything anymore." June's eyes widened. "Impossible. No Omega has this much, because you've all been stealing from yous." Lucy's voice echoed with power. "For centuries, you've convinced us we're weak. that we need alphas to protect us, that our only value is in making others stronger. She advanced on her mother. But the truth? Omegas were never meant to be victims. We're the balance, the anchor, and you're so consumed by your own trauma that you'd rather destroy everything than heal. She turned to face the crowd, to face the High Council, to face every wolf who'd ever looked at her with pity or contempt. The wolf rot isn't caused by being an alpha, it's caused by isolation, by alphas who refuse to be vulnerable, who hoard power instead of sharing it, who see connection as weakness. Lucy knelt beside Luca, placing her hand on his chest where his heart thundered. "But I'm not afraid of your darkness." She pressed her forehead to his, silver light pouring into the shadows, consuming him. "I see you, Luca Northwind. I see the boy who became king too young, who carries the weight of an empire on his shoulders, who's so terrified of becoming a monster that he pushes away anyone who might actually love him." The shadows screamed, fighting her light. But Lucy didn't pull back. She pushed deeper, following the threads of darkness to their source, the shadow wolves, ancient and starving. And she understood. They weren't evil, they were lonely, primal wolf spirits severed from the modern world, desperate to be remembered, to be integrated, to be whole. "You don't have to fight anymore," Lucy whispered to them. "I see you too." The silver light shifted, became something else, not domination, but invitation. The shadow wolves hesitated, then slowly, carefully, began to retreat. Not banished, not locked away, healed. Luca gasped, his eyes flickering from black to gold to finally, beautifully, human. He stared at Lucy like she'd hung the moon. "How did you—" "Because someone very wise once told me that Omegas don't conquer with force. We balance with acceptance." Lucy smiled through her tears. "You were trying so hard to fight the darkness, you forgot you could just let it belong." She stood, turning to face June and the council. The prima luna light still blazed around her, but now it felt different. Not aggressive. Inevitable. "The monarchy doesn't end tonight," Lucy declared, "but it does change. No more hoarding power, no more hierarchy built on subjugation. Alphas and omegas were partners, equals, and if you can't accept that..." She let the threat hang. The arena was utterly silent. Then Luca stood beside her, whole and sane and hers. "Then you answer to us." June laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "You think a speech changes anything? The council will never accept an Omega Queen, and your precious king will rot again the moment you let your guard down. Then let's make this official." Lucy turned to the High Council, her voice ringing with authority. "I invoke the right of ascension. Any wolf can challenge for leadership. You've said I'm unworthy? Prove it. Face me. All of you." The council members exchanged glances. The head councilman sneered. "You'd fight all 12 of us? That's suicide." "No." Lucy's smile was sharp. "It's a demonstration." She raised her hands, and the silver light pulsed outward in waves. Every wolf in the arena gasped as they felt it. Not an attack, but a connection. Lucy was showing them what true Omega power felt like. Not draining, not weakening, amplifying. The council alphas staggered as their wolves surged with newfound strength, not stolen strength, shared strength. Lucy was taking the rage, the violence, the aggression that made them dangerous and transmuting it into something controlled, purposeful, noble. "This is what we were meant to be," Lucy said quietly. "Alphas leading with strength, Omegas guiding with wisdom. Not one above the other, together." The head councilman dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face. I haven't felt this clear in decades. The constant anger, the need to dominate. It's gone, but I'm not WNC, I'm free." One by one, the other council members knelt. Not in submission, in recognition. Only June remained standing, her face twisted with rage and grief. "No, this isn't how it ends. You don't understand. Your father, he seemed balanced too at first. then he tore apart an entire village, killed innocents, killed children. Her voice broke. I can't watch you become him. I'm not him, Mother. Lucy stepped forward, and despite everything, her voice was gentle. And you know what? Neither was he. Not entirely. The massacre happened because you left, because he lost his anchor and the wolf rot took over. You're so consumed by guilt that you'd rather destroy the entire system than admit you made a choice and it had consequences. June's blade trembled in her hand. I did what I had to. You ran, just like I almost did. Lucy's eyes shimmered with tears. But running doesn't heal anything, it just spreads the pain. She held out her hand. Let me help you. Let me show you there's another way. For a heartbeat, June wavered. Lucy saw the mother she'd lost, the woman who'd loved her enough to fake her own death to protect her from this world. Then Enzo's roar shattered the moment. He'd recovered, his wolf fully emerged and feral. If I can't have you, no one will. He lunged, not at Lucy, but at Luca. Lucy moved on pure instinct. She threw herself between them, silver light blazing, and caught Enzo's claws with her bare hands. The energy transfer was instant and absolute. Every ounce of power he'd ever stolen came flooding back into her. And finally, she could see the full truth. Enzo hadn't just been draining her power. He'd been draining her memories, her confidence, her sense of self. No more, Lucy whispered. She pushed, and Enzo's wolf simply dissolved. Enzo collapsed, gasping. Human. Fully, completely human. His wolf was gone, not dead, but severed. Lucy had performed the severance, taking back everything he'd stolen and leaving him with nothing but his own insignificance. You'll live, Lucy said, looking down at him without hate or pity, just finality. But you'll live as what you truly are, a man who built his entire identity on someone else's foundation. Maybe now you'll learn to stand on your own. Sophia rushed forward, catching Enzo before he collapsed completely. For the first time, Lucy saw genuine emotion on the alpha female's face. Fear. Loss. Love? Take him home, Lucy told her quietly. Help him find out who he is without the power he stole. If he can. Sophia nodded, tears streaming, and helped Enzo from the arena. The crowd parted silently. Lucy turned to June, who stood frozen, her blade lowered. I'm not asking you to forget what happened to Father. I'm asking you to stop letting it poison everything you touch. June's shoulders shook. I don't know how. Then learn. Lucy's voice was gentle but firm. You spent decades planning revenge against a system. Spend the next decades helping us rebuild it into something better, or walk away and let us try without you. But you don't get to burn it all down because you're too afraid to heal. For a long moment, June said nothing. Then she dropped the moonstone blade. It shattered on the arena floor. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. Probably not, Lucy agreed. But I'm giving it anyway. That's what Omegas do. We offer balance even when it's not earned. What you do with it is your choice. June met her daughter's eyes, and Lucy saw the woman she might have known, strong, brilliant, and utterly broken by grief. Slowly, tentatively, June reached out and touched Lucy's cheek. You're so much stronger than I ever was, she murmured. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Not forgiven, not redeemed. But maybe, someday, healed. Luca's hand found Lucy's, warm and solid and real. That was remarkably merciful, considering she tried to kill me. Mercy isn't weakness, Lucy said, leaning into him. It's the hardest kind of strength. The High Council approached, heads bowed. Your Majesty, the head councilman said to Lucy, we formally recognize your claim to the Obsidian Throne, the first Regent Alpha Omega in werewolf history. Lucy looked out at the assembled wolves, alphas, omegas, betas, all watching her with something like hope. She thought about the girl who'd been rejected 3 days ago. Who'd believed she was worthless? That girl was dead. But what rose from her ashes was something infinitely more powerful. "Then let's get to work," Lucy said, squeezing Luca's hand. "We have an empire to rebuild." 3 months later, Lucy stood on the balcony of the Shadow Keep, watching the sun rise over the Frostback Mountains. Behind her, she heard Luca's footsteps, felt his arms wrap around her waist. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured against her neck. "Too much thinking." She turned in his arms, studying his face. The shadows were still there. They always would be. But now they were integrated, controlled, part of him rather than consuming him. "Do you ever regret accepting my offer that night?" Luca's smile was slow and genuine, nothing like the cold mask he'd worn before. "Every day." At her shocked expression, he laughed. "I regret that I didn't find you sooner. That you had to suffer 3 years with that parasite. That we wasted so much time dancing around what we both knew from the moment you kissed me. And what's that? That you were always meant to be mine, and I was always meant to be yours." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Fated mates aren't about destiny, Lucy. They're about choice, and I choose you. Every day. Every moment." Lucy's heart swelled. Below them the empire was changing. Omegas were training beside alphas. The old hierarchies were crumbling. It would take decades to undo centuries of damage, but they were trying, and trying was enough. "I love you," she whispered. "I know." Luca grinned at her exasperated look. "I'm the Alpha King. I know everything." She shoved him playfully, and he caught her hands, pulling her close for a kiss that tasted like pine and smoke and home. Somewhere in the Silver Crescent territory, Enzo was learning to live as a human. Somewhere in the wilderness, June was walking her own path toward redemption. Somewhere, wolves who'd been told they were too weak or too aggressive were discovering they were exactly enough. And here in the Shadow Keep, the Omega who demanded a crown stood beside the king who'd given her one, not because she needed it, but because she'd earned it. "Ready to face the council meeting?" Luca asked. "They're proposing new legislation about Omega rights." "Let me guess, they're trying to restrict us again?" "Actually, they're proposing full equality. They've learned their lesson." He paused. "Well, most of them." Lucy laughed, taking his hand. "Then let's go teach the rest." Together they walked back into the fortress, not as king and queen, not as Alpha and Omega, as partners, as equals, as proof that the old ways could die, and something better could rise from the ashes. And that, Lucy thought as she smiled at her mate, was the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying those who hurt you, but becoming so radiant they couldn't help but see how wrong they'd been. Your value isn't determined by those who fail to see your worth. Like Lucy, you might be in a place right now that's draining your light, making you believe you're less than you are. But moving toward those who challenge you, respect you, and see your true power, that's how you reclaim your throne. If this story moved you, subscribe and become part of this journey with me. I'm building something here, a community that believes in second chances, in rising from the ashes, in becoming the person everyone said you couldn't be. And speaking of rising from the ashes, the video on your screen right now, it's another story about someone who refused to stay broken. Click it, watch it. Let's keep this energy going together. Your crown is waiting.